family, Craig and I and others will be down there too. So let's look at, okay, the settlement, right? The NCAA had this settlement. It was gonna pretty much end everything.
No, we went through it with a bunch of our guests last week, Smokey, that it was like Midwinter was on, some of the people were on. It's not. And this from Ross Dellinger, perhaps let me pull it up here on my computer so I can read it over here because I'm old and blind now.
I got it. Perhaps some of the information from the settlement documents in here, more on the economic incentive for schools to bring collectives in-house. They can increase cap space by buying athletes' NIL rights and using those rights to generate third-party NIL. Third-party NIL doesn't count towards the cap.
Yes. So what this means, and I know that like a lot of people I think would probably be reticent to have, sell the NIL rights, but that's going to be negotiated by agents. It'll probably be a win for the athletes no matter what, because the market's going to set what they're worth. And so if you're worried like, oh, they're going to buy the NIL rights back and screw the athletes again, no, I think this is just a way for them to control that and to get around the cap, which is arbitrarily right now set at $20 to $22 million. So, I mean, it didn't really change much. It just changed. Honestly, none of this has changed much, other than the delivery systems or penalties or lack of penalties there are for the delivery systems of cash.
I'm not trying to compare athletic administrators by any means and or agents or athletes or whoever else to any kind of roaches. But what happens when exterminators come up with a way to kill roaches?
Well, they're some of the more resilient creatures in the world.
The roaches get tougher and figure out a way. Also, Craig, intended to eliminate collectives, the NCAA settlement has triggered its next revolution or evolution. Many are transitioning into university-funded marketing agencies, positioning schools to circumvent the cap and mitigate legal risk. Yet again, part of what we were talking about, we're now, and I spoke with an NIL collective representative, and they said they're being briefed on what all of this actually does mean.
Well, then they can explain it to me, because I don't know nearly enough of what they know to fully comprehend what's at hand here, other than I'm just not surprised that there's already people looking to find the
loophole
and the way to cheat it again. I mean, that's college sports 101, baby. Is if there's a way to try and cheat, there's a way to, not even cheat's the word, there's a way to gain an advantage, let's say that. Somebody will find it. So no surprise that they've had several weeks now as this was all being talked about, several months, I mean, of just knowledge of kind of the back and forth that's going on. But as this deal drew closer to being agreed upon, that still took a little while and gave people plenty of time to figure out, all right, well, if this does take effect, how do we exploit that, or how do we take advantage of that? And so, just as soon as the settlement's quote-unquote agreed upon, although there's not any ink dry yet, they still have to finalize this thing, but for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much finalized. And yeah, before there's even a signature put to paper to make it official, there's already schools that know how they're going to counteract it. So not surprised by that. That's college athletics, especially at the top level, is always trying to find a way to have an advantage. And people who thought the collectives were going to be a thing of the past as soon as this was a thing and agreed upon were incredibly wrong. I think they're going to be as much a part of it as ever before. There's going to be more in-house, and it's going to be you're going to have like people who were working at a collective in their living room are now going to be having an office at like the University of Michigan.
Right.
And they're going to be a part of a new wing, a part of the football or whatever athletic department, and it's all going to be still very much a collective-driven, I think, enterprise, just with the guidance of schools and the power of the schools as well. So, collectives aren't going anywhere. And certainly you couldn't have expected that everybody was just going to look at the agreement and say, all right, we're on an even playing field now, nor have been content with being on an even playing field. So, yeah, more to come as far as this goes, and more chaos, I think, to follow.
This just allows them to take out the step of, let's pretend like the university doesn't have anything to do with this.
Right.
We talked last week about Florida State trying to, get their penalties repealed because, they had a coach drive somebody to an NIL meeting, which is like, what? Like, How do they? If you don't know where you're going, how did you get there? Like I don't understand that whole thing in the first place. So now,
who set up that meeting?
Yeah, like who said? Of course, who? Everybody. Like it's not. If this is also like if that was what the NCAA was going to penalize was like dropping kids off. Like what do you like? Your enforcement's going to be really busy. So it gets rid of all that of like, oh, you can't drop it off, or you can send the athletic director and the head coach and everybody else to fundraise for NIL. But when a player asks them, like, hey, can you drive me to the NIL meeting? Like, oh, no, we can't do that.
Or back to the airport if he's a recruit.
Yeah.
So it is SEC. There's meetings going on. Greg Sankey, god of college football. This is a quote from him on when he was asked about collective bargaining. To be in collective bargaining, you have to be in an employment situation. I have not had a student athlete come to me and say they want to be taxed like an employee.
Okay. This is my least favorite, and it's a very disingenuous argument in the people who are against like paying athletes or changing it. So, and this is different, like all the way around. And this is such a weird thing. First of all, if they were taxed like employees, their taxes would be lower than if they are like, I'm an independent contractor, you're an independent contractor. We're responsible as independent contractors for all of our taxes, is where if we were fully employed, then the company takes part of the taxes. There's other ways to do that. So that's actually better tax-wise. Also, the argument, and I've heard this from a ton of fans or people like, oh, well, the tax man's coming. Let me ask you this. Did you like your life better when you were broke and didn't pay taxes, or when you had more money and could do the things you wanted, but the sacrifice for that was paying taxes? I think most people would take employed paying taxes.
Yes.
And as opposed to broke and eating ramen all the time. Like, yes, you might have, had more fun, had more beer, gotten laid more or whatever. But the bottom line is, like, it's better. Like, when I can go on vacation in a plane as opposed to driving 90 miles away and staying at a Motel 6, that's better. If I have to give the government some of the money, fine, it sucks, but like not everything can be perfect in life.
Well, there's always the part when we all had to learn this in 2020, after 2020, when we did not have taxes taken out because we were contract employees, and all of a sudden, if you're not smart with the money you get and put some of it back, then all of a sudden there's a larger chunk that would be there owed than if you were having to take it out month to month or every other week when you got paid.
Yeah, I don't know what he was trying to accomplish here, other than he sounds like he wants his cake and
eat it too.
And wants to eat it too. As far as he's basically gotten everything that he wanted as commissioner of the SEC. They have a stranglehold on the power along with the Big Ten, and now he wants to try and put the language out there to make sure that they get what they also want, which is to not have athletes as employees. Yeah. Because no matter how much money they're making, guess how that money quickly starts to get taken away from them?
Yeah.
They have to pay the employees. They have to suddenly pay health insurance. They have to pay all these
payroll taxes.
All these different things. And so as much money as they have, they're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. It's still a situation where you're trying to make as much money as humanly possible. And I think that to do that, they're going to have their cake and eat it too, which is to have their super conference ideas and their, stranglehold on the playoff spots and
larger
more money,
revenue,
and more TV time and everything, and then still hold the athlete back as though they're still just a student athlete and it's all the same that it's always been, which is total BS. But that's Greg Sankey for you, because I don't think that everything the man says is gospel. Some people treat it that way. I think this is one of the few times I've actually seen enough people actually realize, like, what he said is actually garbage. Like, what he said is actually not the standard message, I think, to be out there displaying to the world as far as what college athletics is going to be in the future, or the way it needs to come across, because it does come across as a guy who has his cake and wants to eat it too. And I don't know, man, the more money you guys are making, the harder and harder it's going to be to argue against the employment thing. So good luck with all that.
Also, this was a nugget that was dropped yesterday about injuries. The NFL, of course, have injury reports. And if you mess one of those up, or you play a game with one of those, you could lose a draft pick. You could be fined, but also even lose draft picks if you mess with injury reports. And a lot of it's because of, well, not a lot of it, it's because of gambling.
Well, look, if you want to keep here's where college is running into a kind of a collision course. Obviously, they don't want gambling really anywhere near them, but they do kind of want that money, and they want the interest that money generates. So you get more fans through gambling. The WNBA's popularity is up because of Caitlin Clark, and also you can bet on it now. So used to, they wouldn't give you lines on it because they didn't really follow it. But now, guess what? If I can bet on a WNBA game and I didn't care, and, I'm about to make $5,000, all of a sudden, I care what Angel Reese does.
Yep.
Especially if I, try to hit the over on her points for the night. Like maybe I'm going to watch that game. So gambling increases interest for all the good and the bad. The other problem they have is obviously there's been some gambling scandals, Iowa State, other places. They're going to keep coming. So that means that you have to do all you can do to force integrity and all the knowledge out into the public sphere, because the more secrets you keep, the more scandal you can create. So if coaches are allowed to keep secrets and be like, oh, he's got a bum knee or a bum ankle or this and that, it could be a couple weeks, but you've got a guy on staff who calls Vinny and goes, hey, 6 weeks. And Vinny knows, then all of a sudden you're not above board anymore.
Okay, you think that with Jim Harbaugh, who's no longer with Michigan, he would treat that the same as Nick Saban would treat it, as Sarkisian would treat it, as Sonny Dykes would treat it?
No, I mean, they're all different. Look, and some coaches are still high school coaches in their mind, so they don't have to tell you anything, and they don't. But if you make them say it, then yeah. Also, I do think it is insulting to your fellow coaches to think that you're gaining some sort of an advantage, that they're also not smart enough to think that this guy may or may not play, and they'll prepare both ways. The only advantage you get is that maybe you stress them out and take away some practice time for the other guy. But if the starter's out, that's probably going to benefit them anyway. So
yeah, there are people inside each program. There's reasons why the line, Craig, might drop a half a point or a point one way or the other. People know what's going on at practice.
Yeah, they know. I think this is just more of the professionalization, and I think that comes with the gambling territory as well. I wonder how far they're going to go with trying to be like the NFL. I wonder where that eventually stops. Clearly, it stops at employment. That's the one bridge we want to be like you in every way, shape, and form, and definitely make the money that you make. But we don't want to pay our employees. Oh wait, they're not employees. That whole thing is not in their to-do list, but. Standard injury reports, I think, with the amount of money swirling through Vegas and all the other various methods, it makes sense. It's been talked about for quite a while now. I've heard coaches discuss this from all different leagues and backgrounds over the past couple of years, and I think most seem to be on board with it, despite the, feeling that you can maybe gain some type of a slight advantage by being coy about your starting quarterback or something along those lines. But like y'all said, most of the time, and even before gambling got big, people still knew. They still somehow knew. I don't know how they always know, but they knew. Vegas always knows. So I don't think this is, a situation where you're really losing out on anything. I think it's just probably better for fans and all parties to just go ahead and make it clear. And yeah, you lose a little bit of gamesmanship, but how much of that was there really to begin with, as we're saying here? So, yeah, I think this is something that has been bandied about and makes sense moving forward to have something like this installed.
All right, so Steve Sarkisian, not sure if we have this one or not from Brett McMurphy. Steve Sarkisian on how to make sure coaches are truthful if required to release injury reports. Fine us. That's what they do in the NFL. Craig was just bringing that up. The NFL figured this out. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you don't report a guy, fine us. We all like the money we make.
But you have to do it. It can't be like $10,000. It has to matter, or else I do think there is some coach in the SEC that will sacrifice $100,000 if he thinks that he can get some type of advantage for that. If he can, But if you pop him $100,000 one time, then I think you're far less likely to sit there and screw around again.
Yeah.
But it's like, you got to make it. You got to make it enough of a severe punishment.
You have to make it hurt.
Yeah, to make sure that people don't just go like, whatever, and just move on along and do it again. So if they can make it substantial enough, then yeah, I think the only way to really hurt anybody is to take scholarships. You're not going to do that over an injury report. You're not going to levy any type of heavy penalty. So yeah, the only thing you can really do is hit them in the wallet and make it substantial enough that it hurts a little bit. And I do think that would alleviate some of the concerns about people still trying to game the system, although this is college football we're talking about. So I'd imagine somebody out there is already figuring out a way to get around injury reports if at all possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you say, all right, you do that, it's $50,000. Well, I think somebody's far less likely to continue trying to do that.
I just think it's so old school and old fashioned. Like, it's like 1931 football where there's no line splits and there's no face mask. We're like, we got a secret guy off the bench. We signed him from the coal mine.
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of
He's
stuff.
33 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Every single game is on TV or the internet, right? So your coaches are going to scout that, and your coaches are going to see a game where on tape, you know, the quarterback got hurt and maybe he came back in, but when he came back in, he couldn't run anymore. He was just kind of sitting back there throwing. So you really think that you saying like, oh, no, I think Johnson's going to play this week. He looks good. And then him not playing is like, gotcha.
Yeah.
No, they know, like, they have whole staffs of guys who are desperate to be coaches that this guy is in charge of breaking down offensive film in the first quarter. This guy's the second quarter. This guy's the third quarter. And this guy's the fourth. And then they've got 4 other guys on defense doing the same thing and then handing the coaches all these broken down things. So the fact that any information slips through in 2024 is just old school naivete and coaches not wanting to change.
I think it's great for the bettors out there. That's great news for them. They've been begging for this, I think, for quite a while because you do stand to have an advantage because you're not following Texas Tech football on a daily basis to figure out if the quarterback's healthy. But if it's just out there and you're like, oh, wait, their quarterback's out, then I'm going to bet on this Virginia-Texas Tech game or whatever. So, yeah, I think from that standpoint for the bettors, it's great. For the fans to just kind of know for sure, I don't know how much of a difference that really makes. You follow your team closely enough, you can kind of figure out who's playing and who's not. But just to actually know and not have speculation, I think is nice. It's not necessary, but it's nice. And, yeah, I think if you're a coaching staff on the opposite side who has any inclination that the quarterback you're about to play is injured, you're already watching the other guy anyways. Like, even if it's a 90% chance the guy plays, there's still a 10% chance you're still watching film on the backup and preparing for that guy. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't think you're, oh, God, I'm glad they said that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been prepared at all for the second-string quarterback. No, if the previous guy was hurt, you're banking on the other guy. There's a good chance. You just don't know for sure because there's no injury reports.
We're going to get to the Baylor uniforms in a moment, but let me ask you guys this. If somebody's leaking information about injuries within a university, within a football program, who is it?
I think it's the lower-level staffers who have enough knowledge and who aren't bound to that school. I mean, these guys, they move around from school to school every year, every couple years. They're not loyal to a school unless you maybe went there and then you're a weirdo like Connor Stallions who are weirdly obsessed with, the head coach. But other than that, I don't think that, look at the coaching staff at any school. How many places have these guys been?
Yeah.
How many people have they crossed paths with? How many guys do they know on all the other staffs at all the other schools? They all know each other. They all go to the conventions. So I think it's any number of those people and probably in some cases people who have an old relationship or whatever that maybe don't think it'll be crucial information that's backbreaking, so you're not really backstabbing your current employer, but it's enough of a bone you're throwing your buddy that, or your hope is to eventually go join him at that school, and you think that maybe by doing that you get a leg up in getting that job elsewhere or something. I don't know, but that's where it has to come from. Or the trainers, But, how deep can it possibly go?
And again, we're not pointing the fingers.
No.
I'm just asking that question.
Well,
It
there's
could
only
be
so
the
many
guy,
people that could know.
Could be somebody that maintains the field.
Could be the dad of the player.
Yeah,
for all
exactly
we know.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. So there was that.